It's the Underdogs back with you for another week. I am Jordan Brenner, joined as always by my co-host and role model, Peter Keating. Peter, good day.
Jordan, this is a big day in underdog history. I just want to point out that by releasing uh, uh, the pitcher who threw his glove into the stands, and also releasing Omar Narvaez, who couldn't throw out Coke cans on recycling day, the Mets have now committed $70 million to players who are not playing this year, which is greater than the payroll of the Oakland Athletics. And we talk a lot about what makes smart underdogs. It's not just money, right? Winning doesn't just mean money, it means being smart underdogs. I suspect we're going to be revisiting that. It's a big underdog day.
Should we do an entire episode at some point this summer on the underdog life of a Mets fan? Listeners, do you want that? Let Peter know. Like hit him up on Twitter or X or whatever the hell we call it now. We could do this. We could make fun of Peter
Yeah,
for an entire episode.
it's either that or me droning on about Brent Rooker, and other underdog players on the Athletics, which I am not sensing any groundswell of support for there. So let's do the miserable life of the sad underdog.
There we go. All right. Well, let's get off of sad. We've got some fun stuff to talk about today. Okay. WNBA is all anyone's talking about, Caitlin Clark, but we're going to talk about a couple underdogs that can turn things around maybe after a slower start than usual. Peter's got a horse pick for the final time this year in the Belmont.
Of course.
But first, it's NBA Finals time. They start Thursday. Celtics, Mavericks, and we've got a new segment on our show brought to you by DraftKings, and it's called Nailed It. And it's where we look back on something we may have gotten right over the course of time. And by God, right around the All-Star break, we did a show where we talked about NBA teams that could turn things around after the break and maybe make a surprise run. And Peter, you were right. Sarah, play the clip.
Jordan, right now the Dallas Mavericks are plus 3,000. There has been an absolute crazy, stunning turnaround in their defense since the trade deadline. Now, it's a very small sample size, but they've gone from 20-something in the league to fourth. The turnaround in their defense is short-lived so far, but it's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah. All right, Peter. Well done.
Jordan,
So
notice I also for like the third time on this program plugged Uncle Drew, and I've gotten some blowback. I am not getting paid by anybody who made the movie Uncle Drew. It's not product placement. I thought Chris Webber delivered an Oscar-worthy performance in that movie as the preacher. I loved Uncle Drew. I loved Kyrie and Luka in theory, and I love that they made it work in practice. It's really that simple, Jordan. Many of my profound insights are very basic in basketball, as you know.
So let's talk about what you saw, what has happened, and then whether it actually can play out in the finals against a team better than any Dallas has faced so far. So you pointed out, Peter, about building a team properly around Kyrie and Luka, who are two ball dominant guards. And the way you have to do it is find versatile bigs, versatile wings who can defend first and foremost, hit spot up shots, do the little things. They found it in PJ Washington, who is like the template for that, hitting corner threes. He's got size at the 4. He can defend, and obviously getting Daniel Gafford and turning the center spot into a two-headed rim running, shot blocking, rebounding monster with Derek Lively.
Say that 3 times fast.
Rim running monster. Yeah. Anyway,
two-headed.
But you couldn't have thought it would work out this well, right?
No, in fact, a couple of weeks later, I said if they beat the Thunder, it'd be a nice season, right? And well, why would that be a nice season? Why stop there? And you were right about that. Jordan, it's kind of crazy. Like, you listen to enough talk radio and you begin to think like fans that you just plug somebody in here, you make the right move there, you can rebuild a team like that, right? Fans know, players know, everybody knows where teams are weak. Here's the thing, other teams do too. So do agents, right? It is astonishingly rare for a team that's pretty good to build itself into a championship contender in the middle of the year. It's even rarer than we think to build a team that's pretty good into a championship contender overnight during the offseason. That's hard enough, right? They did it in the middle of the year. So that's one thing to take notice of. Like, they made all these moves that worked out right on the fly. That's pretty good. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And it has historically been hard to pair two guys who are as ball dominant, have high usage rates like Kyrie and Luka, more often than not, that doesn't mesh. It meshed because there's literally no one else they're playing with regularly who demands or needs the ball at all. And then they are both so skilled, so efficient, such good passers. Kyrie is, we've talked about where I feel like he ranks, just most skilled players pound for pound. But having the right complementary pieces really has allowed both of them to flourish in what they do best.
Well, and also let's just not, I mean, people lost sight a little bit of just how great Luka is, right? I mean, over the past few years, different superstars have taken their turns as the centerpieces of championship winning teams, whether it's Giannis or Steph Curry or whoever, all these deserving players. But I mean, I've seen a lot more segments on whether Jaylen Brown was a 1 or a 1A on ESPN than I have about how great Luka is over the past 2 or 3 years, right? And I think he, when they didn't win right away with the other players around him, I think he fell by the wayside in terms of, but he's a freaking great player. He's in just this natural smoothness to him. He plays with joy. He plays with abandon, but also discipline at the same time. That's hard. And he works his ass off. He's just great to watch. He really is.
So now as we head into the finals, okay, and you talk about this a lot. When you made that pick, I think the Mavs were plus 3,000 to win a title. So the risk reward of putting a bet on them was very different. Now, what are they, plus 175, plus 185 to win the series?
Right.
They are an underdog, but they're not a massive underdog. So the question becomes, what percentage chance do we give them of winning the series? Is there still value in picking them? How do they match up with the Celtics? I have some thoughts there, but please, since you were right about them once before, go first.
I have to say, I run the numbers every which way. I spent an inordinate amount of time this morning pace adjusting my estimates to see whether that would make a difference.
Okay.
I can't see value in Dallas. Dallas at plus 175 for the season, for the series, implies that they have about a 45% chance of winning any given game. And I just don't think they're that close to the Celtics. Teams that are seeded fourth or worse, or teams that won a lot fewer regular season games, have miserable records in the finals. One thing to not lose sight of, despite how great Luka is how well put together and how high a level Boston's functioned at for this entire season. I can't see I think maybe there's a 20% chance that Dallas pulls this off over a 7-game series.
So I'm actually going to give them a better than 20% chance. The key question to me is the Celtics haven't been tested in the playoffs, okay? The Celtics were dominant in the regular season, no question, okay? But there's also no question that the East was decimated by injury, and their road here was laughably easy, okay? They faced an injured Miami team. They faced a semi-injured Cleveland team and a Pacers team that only got there because the Knicks completely fell apart physically. So that's not running the gauntlet that Dallas did in getting here, beating the Clippers, beating the Thunder, beating the Timberwolves. So,
but Jordan, let me ask you a quick question.
Yeah.
How much does it count to you that they've beaten more teams by 20 or 25 points? Like, they've dominated more games, raw numbers, than any team in NBA history. They've taken opponents and they've crushed them. And they've played at a slightly lower level in the playoffs, but that was out Porzingis, who made a big difference this year. And I'm honor bound to point out that Porzingis, Brown, and Tatum playing together, right, outscored opponents by 11.1 points per 100 possessions in the regular season. In the playoffs, when Dallas has been playing better than they had in the regular season, the combination of Kyrie, Luka, and Washington has outscored opponents by 8.2. Their best against the Celtics' best just isn't as good. How much does it matter to you that the Celtics have steamrolled inferior competition without even having one of their 3 key players on the court?
Are you talking about in the regular season or in the playoffs?
Talking about both. Like, how much does it matter in the regular season? How much do you think it'll matter again when Porzingis is back?
I don't think margin of victory, especially against the bottom half of the league, matters much to me. I'm having a hard time getting a full feel for what this team looks like in the playoffs because of the level of competition they're facing. Now, I see 2 key things to focus on in this series. One, obviously everybody's talking about Jrue Holiday, one of my favorite players of all time, that that Kyrie and Luka are facing a different level of defender certainly in Drew Holiday, but Derek White, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, they can all guard, they can all switch. This is a higher level of perimeter defense. The other side is Dallas, again, has two guys who want to protect the rim, want to cut off basket, want to cut off the other team from getting to the basket. Well, what's the best way to neutralize that? You have bigs who can stretch the floor. And if Porzingis is healthy and Al Horford is shooting well, that draws Daniel Gafford away. Derek Lively's better. He's more nimble. He can get out on the perimeter, switch, recover, etc. But it takes away some of what Dallas seems to be doing well on defense, and that's key because the biggest change in Dallas has been their defense, right?
Yes.
They've been a top 5 defense in the
Yes.
playoffs.
Yep.
Can they keep guarding at the same level against Boston? Because I know Boston can keep guarding at the same level against Dallas.
Well, Boston can keep guarding at the same level against Dallas, and Boston's offense. Look, we all know that Boston has had some problems in the first or second games of series over the past few years, right? I mean, the record's terrible, and maybe it'll take a game to adjust with having Porzingis back. But Porzingis makes things flow a lot better. There's a lot less isolation than we've seen from Boston in the playoffs the last couple of years in how they played during the regular season this year with Porzingis. So I'm pretty confident that the flow will be there. So let me ask you this. If we think Boston is somewhat better, and we don't have to settle right now what the gap is between Boston and Dallas, but what's the right way to play this series if we think Boston is somewhat better? Like, I could see taking Minnesota on the money line in game 1. I mean, Boston, that crazy game 1 against Indiana last year, lost the first 3 games to Miami, right? Lost game 1 to the Sixers. 2 years ago, lost game 1 to Milwaukee. They're known for kind of sitting back and trying to figure out what's going on and then getting their heads handed to them in the early action of these series. I could see Boston needing a game to get it together and taking Minnesota to win game 1, even if you're not going to take them to win the finals. I could also see, but let me ask you, what's the right way to play this then?
I don't think there's one right way. I keep thinking the Celtics are going to win this in 6 games. So if you want to bet the Celtics to win 4-2 at DraftKings right now, you can get that at plus 475. There's obviously not much of a margin for error there, right? They win in 5, they win in 7, you lose, but you are getting, almost 5-1 odds on a bet. So maybe you can take that. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think this is going to be a blowout, but I don't think Dallas is going to ultimately win the series. Or it feels like we're both sort of headed in that direction.
Yeah. 5 or 6, maybe. I think 6 sounds right.
5 feels really, really. I don't see Luka and Kyrie getting blown out to that degree. Maybe I'm wrong a lot.
Okay, but how about this? How about Tatum at plus 275 to be the total points leader in the series? As opposed to, I mean, if the defense holds up and Luka and Kyrie split the points, Tatum is the most heavily used Boston player. You know that. It's going to take Porzingis a while to work back. I kind of like that as a little sneaky underdog bet.
Okay. I still think it's going to be Luka, but he's the Celtics spread it around a little more. But I see. I think I'll probably make the like throw a little bit of money on the 4 games to 2 thing, because it just keeps flashing. But look, I'm really interested to see what Porzingis looks. That's the X factor. That's the mystery here, right? How healthy is he? What can he do? If he's not the player he was earlier in the year, my belief in Dallas goes up quite a bit.
Yeah, well, let's put it this way: if Boston's stumbling around with Porzingis on the court, right? This is the wrong team to do that against. They'll just blow up on you if the defense doesn't hold up and if they're stumbling around on offense. This is the wrong. They'll take advantage of that quickly if there's sand in the gears at all. Right. So you're right. That is the X factor.
And to your point, just on the scoring really quick, the player props for game 1, Luka's over under is 31.5. Tatum's is 26.5. So, the market certainly believes that Luka is going to be the high scorer in this game and every other game.
Yeah, but Jordan, we're the underdogs. We got to be looking for things like here. I'll give you my favorite crazy thing that I found.
All right.
In game 1, this is in game 1, for Kyrie to lead the game in points, Tatum to lead the game in rebounds, and
Mhm.
Luka to lead the game in assists.
Okay.
All of which sound not very, but quite plausible to me. That together, that trifecta plus 3,000. There's your long
All
shot for
right.
game one.
Well, maybe that'll be a show bet, but we got to move on to other bets. As the WNBA, we're ready. We're already 20% into the season,
Oh, I
and
thought
we're
you were
gonna.
going to say we need to move on to win, place, or show bets, but
That's
that'll come
coming
later. That's
after
coming
this,
later.
but we'll get to the WNBA next. We're back, and look, we've told you we're all in on women's basketball this year. We got our fantasy league cooking. We're following the WNBA on a daily basis. So is the national media, but everybody's focused on Caitlin Clark and who might have pushed her and this, that, and the other thing. Peter, I'm bored of it. I want to talk about the actual teams, and I want to say something first. Okay,
Okay.
I need expansion because I can't get super into a league where 8 of the 12 teams make the playoffs, and we're deciding which of the 4 terrible teams might get the 8 seed.
I thought you were going to say, what would I do if you were being fouled like Caitlin Clark? And I believe our producer, Sarah McCrory, will stand with me on this. We would not let it happen. We'd go out there and kick down and beat up whoever was trying to foul you, Jordan. I just want to put that on the record.
Well, I feel like if our show is like a basketball game, you were repeatedly fouling me in every way possible. So I really think it comes down to
And
Sarah not.
it's not even limited to the show, actually.
And I
So
feel like Sarah has great enforcer potential, and
yes.
I feel like she doesn't have my back. So this is
I
really upsetting.
I think Sarah identifies with you as a teammate and would have your back. I will totally.
All right.
Yeah.
But on to the actual women's basketball league. Peter, the Washington Mystics are awful. They're 0
Uh-huh.
9. They don't even have the worst net rating in the sport at negative 16.9 points per 100 possessions. That's your Indiana Fever, who are 2 9 with Caitlin Clark. Okay.
And the arrow's pointing down because
Right.
they're full of injuries now, too.
So they're done, both those teams. Then the question is like, all right, the Chicago Sky are 3 5. The LA Sparks are 2 6. Both are young. Both have several rookies, that they're counting on. I guess, can either of those teams jump into the top 8? And do we even care because they're just first round fodder?
I wonder here we are. Quarter of the season's done already, which that happened fast, right? Commissioner's Cup is here. I wonder if it's not too early for the teams that are kind of clearly out of it or who could be out of it to start thinking about tanking, because tanking, just the structure of the league, the amount of money involved, which is lower than everything kind of, there's a lot of incentives is what I'm trying to say for WNBA teams to tank, because you're aiming for a handful of superstar potential, every year. And I'm a little worried that the bottom teams are already like, well, we had draft picks, we stashed them in Europe. They don't even need to play. Do we really even need to win? So I think there's a stratification going on that's pretty pronounced pretty quickly. You are right. Having said that, there's some potential for fierce competition at the bottom of the playoff bracket, right?
All right. So let's talk about that, right? Let's say we're stipulating the Sun 9-0, the Aces prohibitive favorite coming into the season, the Liberty 8-2 and outscoring opponents by 10 points per game are the 3 prohibitive favorites. Give me a team you're watching outside of them that you could maybe make a championship bet on.
Outside of them that I can make a championship bet on or playoff bet on them.
Well, I think everybody's making the playoffs at this point.
Everybody's making the playoff.
Right? Like who's catching, let's put it this way. Who's catching your eye?
I tell you, I don't know how far they're going to go. I've been watching the Atlanta Dream. They were under 500 last year, although a playoff team, but they lost 2 games very quickly. Picked about 7th in the preseason by most people. They're 4-3 so far this year. What's fascinating to me is that their defense is terrific. They're holding opponents to about 40% on inside shooting, about 30% on threes. They're fierce on the defensive boards. And what's interesting to me is this is taking the profile of a player they signed, Tina Charles, who was former MVP. I think she's been an all WNBA selection 9 times in her career. She didn't play at all last year. So there's not a lot of notice that they took her on, she's been playing over 30 minutes a game, and that's what she does. She is back to playing strong defense, which I don't think she had a couple of years before she was off last year, and she's fierce on the boards, but she doesn't shoot well. She doesn't shoot well anymore. At least this team does not shoot well, and so if they could just get some smarter shots, some better shots, Alicia Gray's hitting more than half of her threes. If they just get a little more open, this team could be a lot better quickly. I don't know if that's going to happen, but the defense is interesting.
Agreed. I've got one team that's catching my eye. I don't know if they're worth making a bet on yet, but the Dallas Wings, they're plus 4,000 to win a championship. And we talk a lot about embracing chaos and the types of things that lead to big upsets, right? Well, two things. One, arguably their best player, Satu Sabale, still out until after the Olympic break, okay? Arike Ogunbowale, I always mess this up. Arike Ogunbowale, averaging 26 points a game. She's balling out, doing great. The thing that catches my eye is they are the best offensive rebounding team in the league by a wide margin. They're grabbing 41% of their own missed shots, which we talk about in college basketball being a massive indicator of upset potential. If they can keep up that rate, if Sabali comes back, maybe this team has some untapped upside and can do something. Maybe they come up with a rare playoff upset.
Ogunbowale should be the next big face, like the next big superstar. I mean, she kind of is already, but she should be a face and a style that everybody knows. She's fantastic to watch. She's the anchor of my fantasy team. That's not the only reason I'm bringing her up, which beat yours last week, by the way. I just want to bring that up, and that's exciting. I also just want to say that, playoff series are short in the WNBA, so you don't have to assume that, Vegas is some kind of automatic lock to repeat, because teams can get tripped up in the playoffs. And I know they are plus money. They're not any kind of long shot, but man, this Liberties team defense is out of this world. They shot more threes than anybody in history last year. Now they're bringing it. I mean, but now I'm going to have the trouble pronouncing the name, but Nyla Delaney Hamilton. If I could bet on defensive player of the year, I live in New Jersey, I think I'd put money on her because she has been an amazing shutdown force.
Right. Well, look, I'm still going to keep my eye on Dallas, mostly because you already identified the Mavs around this point in the NBA season. So, you never know. Maybe we're doing a nailed it with me on the Wings later on. But now, before we go, Peter wants to horse around a little bit more. So, Peter, the Belmont Stakes are coming up. Why don't you trot on over here with a pick?
I'll try to keep pace with your furiously outstanding predictions, Jordan.
Yeah.
I'll saddle up. Look, the Belmont Stakes are special for two reasons, right? One is that the third leg of the Triple Crown. The second is that the Belmont Stakes is 1.5 miles, the longest race. Well, guess what, Jordan? This year, the race isn't at Belmont, and it's not 1.5 miles. It's at Saratoga, and it's 1.25 miles because of renovations at Belmont. Nevertheless, we can look at some patterns, right? What succeeded in the past and how they apply. So, look, it's better to come out of the Kentucky Derby or the Peter Pan Stakes. Horses that have won one of those have won 16 of the, or have run in one of those, have won 16 of the past 20 Belmonts. It's not good to come out of the Preakness. They have not done well. Double-digit long shots have done well, winning 8 of the past 20 Belmont Stakes. Who else has done well? Todd Pletcher. He's trained 4 Belmont winners. And there's a horse that all of this stuff applies to. It's Antiquarian. He ran in the Peter Pan and won. He has tactical speed. He didn't run in the Preakness. And he's trained by Todd Pletcher. He's 12-1. I find these weirdly long odds. He's coming out of the 5th post in the middle of a 10-team field, which is it's not great, but it's not bad because you don't want to be caught in traffic or caught inside or outside. So he's starting in the middle. And there's weaknesses to all the other. I mean, the Belmont is going to feature the top 2 horses in the Derby and the Preakness, but this is still a longer race at 1.25 miles, and I like Antiquarian. I'm old school, Jordan. I've gone with Antiquarian.
For now, I'm Jordan. That's Peter. Enjoy your week. We'll be back with you next week.